and extend the country's role in global issue. To maximize the institutional and scholarly capacity of a strategic thinking in India, we are required to integrate expertise in our research in order to foster an even-minded international strategy for India. This is a young organization that is in constant search for fresh ideas and thoughts in a strategic studies discourse. With this goal in mind, we have to set ourselves up as an autonomous and a solitary international strategy think tank. We are an intellectual startup functioning with a small number of individuals who are passionate about international affairs. I would now request Sania Jamal, research scholar of Department of Political Science, to take over the further session. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Sonia. Good evening, namaste, and assalamu alaikum to everyone who are present over here. I once again welcome our guests, colleagues, and friends. We know that sudden takeover of Taliban on 15 August 2021 was tragic and frightening for all people all over the world. Unfortunately, some of them glorified the move, but for the people of the soil of Afghanistan, it is much more than a nightmare with a gloomy and uncertain future. The return of Taliban was so quick and unexpected that the American President Joe Biden resembled it with the speed of the light. Moreover, there were human rights violations, deteriorated law and order situation, havoc and disturbance at Hamid Karzai International Airport, where thousands of people were screaming and running towards their mass evacuation. Thus, a questions come to my mind for everyone that the power of fear posed by conservatism and radical regression is so intense that we have forgotten the spirit of humanism, compassion, freedom, and development that we have achieved over these years. The worstly affected by this change was none other than the people of voice and expression. Yes, I'm talking about the voice of press and media, who were forced to choose between their lives and their dutiful profession. On the completion of 100 days of Taliban rule, several media outlets were shut down, and thousands of more journalists were beaten, tortured, or even killed for showing the true colors of the Islamic fundamentalism in an autocratic regime. To enlighten us more on this relevant issue, we have with us very eminent speakers of today. Thus, we hereby move towards our first guest, who is Mr. Abdullah Khenjani, Deputy Minister of Coordination, Strategy, Policy in Afghanistan State Ministry for Peace. In this role, he coordinated the peace process with the Taliban on the behalf of Afghan government. Before joining the Afghan government, he was editor-in-chief at One TV and prominent broadcast journalist with his own TV show. Mr. Khenjani holds MA Politics, Security and Development from King College London. I once again welcome you, sir. Please say something to us on the ongoing crises and challenges in Afghanistan. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Namaste. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon to everyone and good morning. I don't know. It depends on who you are. Uh, it's an emotional time. Let me begin by bringing up the pains and the suffering that the people of Afghanistan is facing at the moment, especially the journalists around the corner of Afghanistan and specifically in rural area. I'm sitting, to be very honest, in a safer place than them. So sometimes when I represent them, I see my moral authority less than the people who are inside Afghanistan. Secondly, I think thank you so much. It's wonderful to have this timely conversation because the international and regional debate and discourse at the moment about Afghanistan have been dominated so much by the humanitarian crisis and city counterterrorism, while equally it's important to look into the freedoms and the rights of Afghans, which is very important and have been part of the big achievement of past 20 years in Afghanistan. And I welcome my compatriot colleagues Roya John and Moman said. I'm sure they may contribute more than me. So I'll be very brief to give everyone a brief of what's going on. Uh, I would touch upon 10 things. Let me remind everyone that I may not go more than 10 minutes, so don't freak out at the beginning. I'm just talking about 10 very brief points. The first point is, as you all know, the freedom of speech in Afghanistan, and in our previous constitutional, it was guaranteed by the constitutional, and unfortunately, by taking over of the government and power by the Taliban, this constitutional right has been revoked. Secondly, the Taliban also revoked the institutional support for the freedom of speech in the country, whereas in our previous constitution, the government and the state and the de facto authority was supposed to be supporting the free media and free journalism in Afghanistan, while we are missing at the moment that fact. The three major shift and changes in Afghanistan is that most of the supporting mechanism, including the unions, the Journalist Federation, those institutions who have been built in the past, which has been built in the past 20 years, has disappeared because most of them either they left the country because of the imminent security threat towards their life, or their fund has dried up. So we don't have those young government institutions to promote, to advocate, and to support free media in Afghanistan. As far as I know, I really hope that I might be fair. Maybe Moban Sahib and Roya John may contribute more. The self-censorship has gone to the highest. That's the fourth point that I would like to highlight here. Most of the journalists are reluctant to talk the truth because there's a principle in journalism that no news is better than your life. And I think unwritten, most of the journalists are following that rules at the moment. The fifth point is we have had, according to the different statistics and data, around 7,000 journalists and media workers around the country. And it's sad that I have noticed recently that the most of the prominent and leading journalists left the country and seek asylum, political refugee somewhere else. So the sector has the brain drain in this sector itself is a strategic threat for the long term and for the freedom of speech in Afghanistan. The sixth point that I would like to talk that the Taliban starts to control the media. By controlling the media, I mean that they love to see a manufactured content, something which really serves their interest, rather than letting the media to speak of the truth. Traditionally, we have to remember that in the past 20 years, the major part of the content of the media have been criticism of the government and criticism of the power, and media have been playing some sort of soft oppositions to make accountable everybody, while we are missing at the moment because Taliban is tactically using Sharia, what they call it, and they are limiting. We have seen that example recently that an academia showed up and criticized very brutally the behavior of the Taliban, while next day the media managers has been summoned to the Ministry of Information and they have been given a vague direction that their content and their broadcasting could not be against the Sharia law, which I really don't know what that really mean and how the media could find its way beyond that vague and general terms and terminology that the Taliban is using. The eighth point that I would like to share is the fund has dried up. The commercial market traditionally in Afghanistan was small. Most of the independent media were dependent so much on international funds and grants. And these funds and grants dried up. It means the channel where the sources were reinforcing the free media and independent journalism in Afghanistan is not there anymore. And that could be directly affect the life of those people who are on the ground. I recently heard many journalists and social media that they were complaining that the media were not paying them. I have seen many examples of them, which I see it as even bigger threat, because if a journalist would not be paid by the media, what would they eat and how they would cope and how they would remain committed, and how that situation would form the free media and journalism in Afghanistan to corruption. That's also important. The the other point, and one point that I would like to share, as Sanya, you may mentioned at the beginning, the level of the violence has gone up against the journalism, and there is an institutional impunity and immunity towards those who are committing and who are using their guns against the journalists. We have recently noticed many examples that the Taliban is started to beat up journalists, while there has been some sort of national outcry on social media, and nobody has made accountable for those intimidation, violence, and especially physical violence, very brutally against the journalists. So the level of the violence, we really still don't know whether that violence has been tactical or there has been a strategic to threaten the bigger free media sector in Afghanistan. That's open to debate. And the 10th and the last point that I would like to share is that in a traditional country like Afghanistan, where there is no strong political institutions such as political parties, media have been really playing a critical role in order to criticize the government, as I mentioned before. As far as we know, yet the Taliban is not ready to hear any criticism by the media or by the pundits and independent commentators who are coming to the media. Overall, constructive criticism has gone from the traditional media in Afghanistan. I haven't seen recently that any media could report on the corruption, I don't know, mismanagement, the lack of capacity of the government for delivery, I don't know, their behavior towards the people. I haven't seen any kind of reports on that at all. And most importantly, part of our constructive media and criticism in our media was investigative journalism. I have been proud to say that according to international index in the world, Afghanistan was more freer than any country in the region, including India, according to the for example, journalists, Reporters Without Borders, a report on 2019, Afghanistan was placing, positioning itself way behind a mother of democracy like India. While I don't know what come out in 2021. With these all very general points, I stop here. I'm sure my colleagues will be more precise and detailed in what they would like to share, but I'll be open for any conversation and exchange. Thank you so much to everyone, to the great and professional organizers that have been pushing all of us to be on time, which is very good for Afghans. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You have rightly pointed out the 10 points which are very important in this ongoing crisis. So we should know about that. What will be the safeguards for the media personals there? It was very disheartening to know that 77,000 prominent journalists left the country and the brain drain is going there. It's totally depressing. I think to safeguard the power of media and journalists, this is the primary duty of any state, and it should be the duty of international law to cover and safeguard the freedom of press and expression, and to safeguard the lives of the journalists too. Thank you, sir. Uh, uh, let's proceed without much ado. We will proceed to our next speaker, who is not other than Ms. Roya Musavim, a young, energetic journalist, public communicator, writer with extensive experience in project management, advocacy, and public relations for past 8 years. She was also served in international and national organizations in support of human rights, women rights, youth, and gender equality. A heartiest welcome to you, ma'am. We would like to hear your experiences about the situation of the women journalists as well as the women of Afghanistan over there who were struggling with the identity crisis of being a woman to being an Islamic woman. Uh, I would like to listen from you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, Khanjanisa, for highlighting very important issues. I want to focus mostly on what's going on right now in Afghanistan regarding the freedom of speech, and how is the women's situation in the media. Are they allowed to work or not? Since the takeover by the Taliban, they except the media in Kabul, whole media around the country, they stopped the broadcasting and publishing because the Taliban said that you should get the work permission from our government and then you restart your working. And after 1 month, all the media across the country that they could survive, and they started their activities across the country, except Kabul, they got the new working permission from the Taliban. And what's the new rule in this working permission? If a journalist for instance, in Balkh or another province or everywhere, they want to publish or broadcast a report, they should send it to Directorate of Taliban, Directorate of Cultural, that he or she he approve it, and then they can publish. Otherwise, they cannot publish it. It's a very visible censorship by the Taliban, that they are censoring all the media across the country, and they are not allowed to publish whatever that criticize their government. And since the fall of the government, I'm sure that's from night they will have specific more statistics, but I will give the statistics of the violence against the journalists. That 75 cases of violence across the country has been recorded since the takeover by the Taliban, and two of them are killing. One is self-suicide, the other is detention, torture, and the threat of works. And right now, women in Afghanistan, media worker women, they are not allowed to go except Kabul, but in other provinces, they are not allowed to go to their media without any mahram. A mahram or a male should accompany them inside the office, and they should stay with them until they finish their work and they get back home. And we see that one part of the community, which is women, that they had presence before, and now they don't have the presence in the media, and it's paralyzed. And women are not allowed to appear as they did before. And recently, the Taliban announced a specific rule that media are not allowed to publish or broadcast the content which has, or the dramas or series that women are playing on them, or they are not allowed to publish or broadcast the entertainment programs. Right now, 95% of the content that they produce, they don't have the music, and the news reports, they are all censored by the Taliban. And then what we can expect from the media, they don't have the open hands. And over 60% of the journalists lost their jobs in Afghanistan, and they are dealing with a very acute economical situation because they don't have no more income. Most of them are the street vendors right now, and the women that they work in the media, they are sitting in the home. And yesterday I talked with one of my friends that she was head of a media in the northern part of Afghanistan, and she had a radio. Right now she cannot do anything because they closed the Taliban closed her radio, and she is sitting in the home, and she don't have any income, and she couldn't go out, and she is in Afghanistan. This is the reality, that how the media workers and how the freedom of speech is censored by the Taliban. And some of the media, as Hanjani mentioned, that some of them self-censored because of their own safety of their staff, because they don't have any more option except to have presence there. They do the self-censor, and the rest are censored by the Taliban, that they should send every single content for their approval. And also that the new directorate of the Nayaz Munkar, they said that in one of the provinces, he said that I'm listening to all the radios. If I attack to this specific radio, no one should climb on me, because they pop. I'm listening that these media guys are going out of our policy. And what is their policy? Their policy that all the media should publish their contents, they're based on the Sharia law that they define it. No, they until now their government don't have any specific legal framework. Then how a media can have and I mean that in the past we had law of access to information, law of media law, but right now they don't believe to them, and they don't accept the constitution. That's why the media are very censored. Women are not allowed to work. These are all the reality that media are dealing there. And also from other aspects, that the journalists who are working, that foreign journalists, that they are there, they cover mostly the superficial, like surfacing, very superficial reports. Only some of them, except some of them, that they go deeper on the showing the reality of Afghanistan. But the media, Afghan journalists that who are stuck in Afghanistan, they're dealing with very tough situation, and no one heard them, and some of them lost their jobs, and they are in the journalists that they have the job, they don't have the good payments. Some of them because the economic crisis right now in Afghanistan, it's a big challenge for the media as well, because they cannot pay the rent of the apartment or rent of the house that they got for the media, electricity as well, and how they can survive and pay for a journalist who is working with them. These are all the challenges and the problems, and if the situation continues like this, I think that we will not see more reports from Afghan journalists who are on the ground, or the national media who are out there. And it's a big big crisis that no one will hear from media there out there who are active and who are reporting, because they are censored. If they go out of their framework that defined by the Taliban, they will be targeted, and no one claim for the responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. As you said, they say that they are giving permission to women to act and work. But there is a question: who asked about their permission? We are free, and we are free to express ourselves. And India, we say that that the women is goddess, and I think women is goddess everywhere until she realizes her power. She will come back, and I hope that everything will be resolved soon.
I hope so.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. This is very disheartening also to know the status and condition of women there and in the world. Women, the condition of women in all over the world is same. They are subjugated to patriarchy since ages. They do not possess any choices, voices, right, privileges, and their freedom. They're always kept with a stricter code of conduct under the name of religion. Thank you, ma'am. We will quickly move to our next speaker, who is Muhammad Sabir Mohan. He is a holder of MA degree and work for RTA, that is National Radio Television of Afghanistan. He also worked for different radios and print media in Afghanistan till 28th August. He was working as media policy advisor and spokesperson for Ministry of Information and Culture of Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. I welcome you, sir, and would love to hear about your experiences from the ground. I also want to for you to cover four major components from you, that is the economical component from the Afghanistan, their security, their education, and their health care under the Taliban regime. Thank you, sir. Sir, can you hear us? Mohammed Sabir, Mohan, sir, can you hear us? I think there is some loss of connectivity. So in meanwhile, we can take questions. If anyone has questions, they can type in the chat box, and we will try to get it into.
Hello, ma'am. Sorry to interrupt you. Am I allowed to ask question?
Yes. You can unmute yourself, give a brief introduction of yourself, and please ask your question.
Hello, Roya ma'am. My question is to Roya ma'am. I am Ashish Kotadia from the Department of Political Science, MS University, Baroda. My question is to, as you have spoken about the Sharia law and also the role of women media worker in Afghanistan, and women, specifically the women media worker, are not allowed to get it home without the mehra. So don't you think it is happening all these kinds of things in Afghanistan because of the patriarchal framework of the Sharia law and also the stereotype mindset of the Talibani militia? And number two, would you agree with me that the Taliban too is pretending to be Taliban one? In reality, they are as it was in from 1996 to 2000 means there is no any difference between Taliban one and Taliban two and their mindset.
Whoever says that the Taliban has changed, it's wrong, because I want to say from my personal experience that we have accompanied AFP France Press in one of the districts of Afghanistan in last June. And we had an interview with the Taliban commander about the situation there and about the health situation of the fighters there. At the end, one of these journalists wanted to take a photo. She was a lady. She wanted to take a photo with this commander. And she said, this Talib commander told that, I'm sorry, I am not allowed to take photos with the women. On that time, I realized that this Taliban mindset has not changed against women. They are the same. The group that they had the mindset in 90s, and they have the same right now. And right now we are seeing that they don't have allowed the girls education in the country from 7th grade to 12th grades, and schools are closed across the country. It shows that their mindset against women has not changed, and they call these people that they are not Islam believers, and whoever, for instance, I give example of my friend that she had a radio. They have beaten her brother because they said that your sister had a radio, and your sister is a prostitute because she had a radio and she was running a radio in the city that people was listening to the musics, and she wanted to guide people in a bad way. And these are all this is the Taliban ideology. Taliban being before a group, it's an ideology that we have seen it, or we can see it everywhere, and they have running the government, and they want to do whatever they want. And right now in the provinces, for instance, in the northern provinces or other provinces, one part of the community is paralyzed because they don't allow the women to work. If for the media workers, they should be accompanied by a male relative. It's too difficult that a male relative in this century accompany a woman, and that everyone has access to technology, and she should be accompanied by a man. It's not rational that they think, and they do whatever they want against women right now because they want to get to the international recognition. They might show themselves very open-minded, but they are not, because right now the women who are participating in the protests in the Kabul, they follow every individual women, and they put under siege their houses. One of my friends, she was participating in the protests in Kabul, and she was followed by the Taliban in their apartment, but they couldn't find her because the neighbors said that she is not living here. See, this is the reality. This is the situation, that how the Taliban want to put their rules on the women, and everyone is suffering in Afghanistan. Everyone is suffering in different way, but women and children are the most vulnerable, that they are dealing. We see that the women who were breadwinners in Afghanistan, now they are sitting in the home and they don't have any income, and we see that their mindset has not changed. They are the same Taliban as they have been in the 90s. There a question?
Thank you, ma'am, for the answer. Mr. Kenjani, sir, I have a question for you. That you had worked with Taliban on peace building process. We want to know what type of mindset do they possess, because Islam is all about peace, but their actions are totally contradictory to that. Please enlighten us on the Sharia laws that are totally different from country to country and people's interpretation. I want to know something on this also. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, to understand the Afghan peace process and the peacemaking process with the Taliban, it's subject to, I think, to many books to be written from the different perspectives. But one thing which might be interesting for your audience and for you all, that traditionally the ideological groups such as Taliban, who have a rudimentary and very rigid structure of understanding and structure of governance, they don't follow so much peace. They are after military victory. They see victory as an end state. They don't see violence and fighting as a means for a political strategy. That's why one of the keys following during this peace process was that Taliban were not committed for a meaningful conversation to reach to peace in Afghanistan, and they're doing it now again. Afghanistan and the people are open for a new social contract that could accommodate everyone, that could bring different voices together, that could give the people dignity, respect, and that could ensure the basic international and fundamental and natural rights and freedoms that everybody is enjoying, regardless of where he or she is living in 21st century. So we have to be mindful for most of these ideological groups such as the Taliban, violence is itself and strategy, violence itself is an end state. And it's very tough to make political deal with them, especially while they have upper hand in killing of the civilians and pressurizing and delegitimizing the concept of the states. So with the second question, ma'am, I think it's important to look into to avoid Sharia phobia and Islamophobia when we are talking about Sharia law, because Islam itself is like Buddhism, like Christianity, like Judaism. It has different interpretation. I've seen in the conversation in the chat box that somebody asked, is it really mandatory for a woman to be accompanied by a mahram, by a male uh, companion to go from one place to another place? Well, it's yes or no. With the interpretation of Sharia by the Al Qaeda, by the Daesh, by the Taliban, it is a must, yes. But by interpretation of 40, 54 other countries in the world that they are also Islamic countries, from Turkey to Qatar, Emirates, Saudi Arabia, no, it's totally different. So Islam itself, Sharia law itself it's an open text, and I think there is a correlation between the person who is reading it and the person who would like how to use it. And it has been a sad story that most of the ideological fanatic Islamic groups such as the Taliban, they are misusing, delegitimizing, and defaming the Sharia law more than anyone in the world, while it has remained a political leverage and political tool for them, but in some cases it's a very deep intellectual, and in the meantime it's a theological conversation which the Taliban has never engaged into such a conversation. For example, I am sure your audience have heard that during the peace process in the past 2 years, almost 65 international fatwa declaration by the highest Islamic authorities around the world. They have denounced the violence and they have asked the Taliban to stop it and engage in a meaningful conversation, while they rejected all of them, including the declaration coming from the highest um, Islamic school, Al Azhar, Egypt, which is some sort of, which is the biggest Islamic and moderate institution for the Muslims around the world when it comes to theology, when it comes to Sharia, when it comes to Islamic philosophy. So the answer could be yes and no. Thank you. I think you may unmute yourself.
Sorry, sir. There is one more question. What is the role of Pakistani media in normalizing the actions of Taliban?
Well, there is a sad trend at the moment, which is running not only by specific media in the region, but generally for most of the journalists who travel in these days to Afghanistan. So there, I mean, we do see some sort of portraying Afghanistan from a lens of a foreigner has always been problematic for the people of Afghanistan. Where journalists going in Afghanistan and they receive a warm welcome and hospitality and minimum standards of physical security with some smiles by the Taliban officials, most of them lose the fact that this treatment is not equal to the people who are in the field, and it's a specific privilege that the most of journalists are receiving, and it's absolutely political rather than being the actual fact on the ground. But this is where we most of us have been frustrated when we do see that even the international journalists, I mean, going from, I don't know, from BBC, CNN, from Al Jazeera, they become victim of such a special treatment that they are receiving, and they have become under influence of the minimum physical security that they are receiving while they are traveling across the Afghanistan. But I think they are missing 2 points that we need to highlight. First of all, they have to ask if we didn't have security in the past 20 years in Afghanistan, who have been threatening the security of the Afghan people and international partners. The second question would be, I think, does the Taliban treat everyone equally? Does, for example, their delegations are entertaining and dating diplomats in a lavish hotel every day in Kabul, or the treatment for local communities are totally different? And this is where I think we need more objective journalism that could be beyond this personal impression and personal, how should I say, the treatment that this individual receiving in these days in Kabul. And we have to not forget the facts, that the facts are different from what it appears to ourselves. And the Taliban have been, to be very honest, very successful, and I'm not using the wording fool, but in misguiding the international diplomats, think tankers, and journalists to give them a different impression, while the reality on the ground is different. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. To Roya ma'am, there is a question that what do you think about women interpretation of Quran like Amina Wadud did? Do the conservative mindset really need the revivalism in order to work according to the 21st century?
Sorry, I couldn't get your question because your voice was like, could you please repeat it again?
Sure, ma'am. My question is that what do you say about the women interpretation or the feminist interpretation of Quran like Amina Wadud did in her works? Do you think that the conservative mindset really need the revivalism of Sharia in order to work according to the 21st century needs?
If we go to the Islam and we see it in the feminism, Islam also allowed women to work, to have presence, to have a freedom of choice. But the Taliban, that they are applying their rules, they apply in an extremism way, and they have their own definition. They do whatever they want, and their government is very conservative. For instance, they don't believe to women to have presence in the community, or not be go out without a male companion. This is how, then how we can expect the Taliban that they believe in women's women's, for instance, women's participation in the political terms, because they have very narrow mindset regarding the women, and they have their own definition from Islam for women. And this is very kind of right now they have very big issues to deal. For instance, the humanitarian situation is catastrophic in Afghanistan right now. We have many priorities on the ground for dealing with but the Taliban, they are only want to take attention, attract attention, and they every day they put a new rule on women's. For instance, last week they announced the specific rules for media, that the women who want to appear on the media, they should have proper hijab. But right now they have hijab. What kind of proper hijab? Full hijab? I mean, they don't have any specific, or they don't know their priorities. They do whatever they want. Only they want to, because they know that women's issue attract everyone's attention. That's why they want to tell every day a new thing. And this is very amazing that each one of them, they have a new a new rule for women. For instance, one of them can, okay, women are not allowed to work. Another can and say women are not allowed to go to education, to get education. And their new rules about the media, presence of women in the media, it's kind of they are thinking like centuries ago. Now in this century, if these radio and TVs don't show the women on their programs, and how they can control the technology, the social media, these people can have access to the social media, to the technology, and they can see women's dramas, women without hijab, and these programs, and through the social media they can see contents, not even not from Afghanistan, but they can see contents from different countries through these media. They cannot control the media through the censorship that they have now, because it's now the way of the broadcasting, or the way of the producing the content is different from 20 years ago, that they had control. Because on that time the people had access only to the newspaper, only to the radio or the TV, but right now everyone has is own media. They have their own social media channels. They can have access, and they can see the women on their social media, how they ban the women presence on the media, and women ban women from their work, from the education. And I'm sure that if they continue like this, I think they will not resist, because when you paralyze one big part of the community, it's too difficult that you can handle all the activities, all the works by one part. And by they do a very conservative and a very extremism male dominated community they have. And also the situation of the journalists, women journalists and the male journalists, that they're in Afghanistan, they are receiving treats by the Taliban, and some of them are home prison, that they are stuck in the country. One of my friends, that he was a journalist for an American media outlet, but he couldn't be evacuated. Right now he's living in home prison, and he doesn't show his own place to anyone, and the Taliban detained his brother for 1 week, and all the community elders went, and they said, okay, we want to make sure to find these journalists for you. But these journalists is living in home prison, and this is the reality, that how they are dealing with the people, with the journalists, with human rights defenders, with women and we have seen it, that they have killed 4 women have been killed in the northern part of Afghanistan, and no one got the responsibility for it. All of these women were the human rights activists, and this is the reality, that how they are dealing with this situation, with the people who were active, and they left. They didn't do the priorities for themselves. They only want to do implement the new rules for women, because they know that this issue attract attention. And we should not forget that the Taliban want more advertisement for themselves. And how do they want to do it? They want to do it through these kind of information. For instance, if anyone write a specific or publish their content, sometimes we don't realize that how we become their own channel, because whenever we want to publish their republish, I mean replicate their content, it's if we don't do the direct, in an indirect way, we do their advertisement, and they want it, and they want to be on the news. They want to make the breaking news. That's all that they are looking for, because they want to get the political recognition for their government.
Thank you, ma'am. You were right about certain points, and I think that they will not understand until their mindset will change, or women themselves will come forward and ask for their rights. I asked also to the God to bless them with the humanitarian wisdom. Um, there is another question about an un-Islamic practice which is prevalent in Afghanistan, and that is called as bachawazi. That is the male prostitution. Can you share something about this also, ma'am? I will be highly obliged.
It's I'm not sure if it's Bachabazi is right now in Afghanistan. Bachabazi has its own concept that like misusing the children for sex object, but I'm not sure if exactly, I don't have more information regarding this issue, but many people blame the Taliban that they had these things, and but I cannot say any specific thing regarding the Bachabazi because I don't have because the place that I was living there, I didn't see. That's why I don't have more overview or the aspects about this issue. Maybe Khanjani give any or know something about Bachabazi because I don't know specifically. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I hope that the grim situation of the country and its countrymen will find a peaceful solution soon. And I will not end it with some negative uh, 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 points. I will end it with the positive words of Zara Nabi, who is the owner of Banu TV in Afghanistan. She says, and I am much inspired about her words, that it is our long journey. We have to go long. And if we stop fighting for our rights, no one will give them to us. I salute the bravery, courage, and the resilience of such women and such people all over the world. And with this, I want to thank everyone for their beautiful remarks and for their presence in the ongoing crisis right now. Once again, I would like to thank Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Vande Matram, and Jai Hind. Now, I would like to invite Shan Chaudhary to give vote of thanks. Thank you. I think there is some problem with Shan with his network. On the behalf of everyone, I would like to thank. I would like to give vote of thanks to our eminent personalities and the speakers present over here, and for providing me an opportunity to moderate this session. Thank you, everyone, and Shabba Khair.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.